My home sold for husband's cancer cure. Upon recovery, he abandoned me for younger female. My son colleague scorned me. I endured frigid night in Downpour, noticing scared child trembling with cold. My final $10 bought sustenance and a cover. 3 days passed, then 17 dark vehicles arrived at Sanctuary. As a Tycoon exited car and saw child beside me, can you imagine pouring every ounce of your being, every last dime, into saving the person you swore to spend your life with, only for them to throw you away like yesterday's trash the moment they recovered? That's my story. And it didn't just break my heart. It shattered my world so completely that at 65 years old, I found myself utterly alone, homeless, and wondering if love had been the most expensive mistake I'd ever made. But what if rock bottom wasn't the end? What if it was just the beginning of a storm, a secret, and a twist that would change everything? It all started on a Tuesday morning, a call that ripped through the quiet hum of my antique shop. My name is Gretchen, and for over 3 decades this shop had been my sanctuary, a testament to my grit and passion. I was arranging white roses when Dr. Martinez's voice came through, cold and clinical. "Mrs. Gretchen, I need you and your husband to come in immediately. The test results are back." My hands trembled so violently the roses scattered. Damon had been so tired, so worn, but we'd blamed it on age. He was 68 after all. Men his age were supposed to slow down. The diagnosis punched the air right out of me. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. I watched Damon, my husband of 42 years, crumble in that sterile chair. His hands, once so strong, now just masked a face etched with fear. Dr. Martinez droned on about chemotherapy, radiation, experimental treatments. But one number screamed louder than all the medical jargon. $250,000. That's what it would take. That night I found Damon in the kitchen, a ghost in the moonlight, staring at our small backyard garden. "I can't put you through this, Gretchen," he whispered, his back to me. "Maybe it's my time. Maybe I should just—" I wrapped my arms around his thinning frame, feeling the bones beneath his shirt. "Don't you dare talk like that," I choked out. "We're going to fight this. Together. Our insurance would cover maybe 60%. The rest? I knew where it would come from. My antique shop. My life's work started with $300 in sheer will, now worth nearly $400,000. Our paid-off house was another $200,000. Between them we'd have enough. I made the decision without telling Damon, without a second thought. The next morning I called a realtor. Janet, my longtime friend, sounded hesitant. "Are you sure about this, Mrs. Patterson? These are major assets. Once you sell, there's no going back." I looked at Damon sleeping fitfully on the couch, his face already gaunt. "I'm sure." 6 weeks. 6 grueling weeks of watching Damon waste away, while I quietly dismantled our entire life. I sold the shop to a developer who planned to tear it down for condos. The house, our beautiful home, went to a young couple who promised to nurture my rose garden. We moved into a small apartment across town, and I became his shadow, his shield. Every morning I drove him to treatments. Every night I held his head while he was sick, learned to cook foods that wouldn't upset his stomach, to give injections, to manage his medications with military precision. For 8 months cancer consumed our world. But it worked. In November, Dr. Martinez uttered the word we'd prayed for: remission. Damon looked better, his color returned, his appetite came back. He even started talking about the future. I thought we'd won. I was so incredibly naive. The conversation that shattered my world happened on a Wednesday evening in December. I was making Damon's favorite soup when he cleared his throat behind me. "Gretchen, we need to talk." My stomach plummeted. I kept stirring, trying to steady my racing heart. "What about?" He spoke of life, of what he wanted. I turned, soup spoon still in hand. Damon was at the table, hands folded, looking anywhere but at me. "I want a divorce." The spoon clattered to the floor, echoing in the sudden silence. "What?" My voice was a stranger's, distant. "I know this is difficult," he said, avoiding my eyes. "But I've realized I want to spend whatever time I have left being truly happy." Happy? We beat cancer together. He finally looked at me and I saw it. Indifference. A cold, empty space where love used to be. "Gretchen, you're a good woman, but we've been living like roommates for years. I want passion. I want to feel alive again. Feel alive again? I repeated, the words burning on my tongue. I sold everything to save your life. I spent 8 months taking care of you. I gave up my business, my home, everything I built. His response was a knife to the gut. I never asked you to do that. Those words hit me like a physical blow. I clutched the counter. You never asked me? You're my husband. Of course I did it. Well, now I'm asking for my freedom. That's when I knew. This wasn't a sudden epiphany. This was planned. There's someone else, isn't there? His silence was all the answer I needed. Who is she? Her name is Sarah. She was one of my nurses during treatment. I felt like I was falling, tumbling into a deep, dark well. Sarah. Pretty blonde, maybe 32. Always so attentive, laughing at his jokes. I thought she was just professional. How long? I whispered. Does it matter? How long, Damon? He sighed. Since July. July. Right in the middle of his treatment. While I was liquidating my entire life to pay for his survival, he was falling in love with another woman. I want you out by the end of the month, he said, standing suddenly bold. I'll give you 30 days. Sarah will be moving in after the holidays. It'll be awkward for all of us if you stayed. I stared at this man, this stranger I'd loved for 42 years, the man I'd sacrificed everything to save. And I didn't recognize him. Where am I supposed to go? I don't have any money. I spent everything on your treatment. He just shrugged, cold as ice. That's not my problem anymore, Gretchen. The next week was a nightmare. I called our son, Robert, clutching at the hope that he at least would understand. He would be outraged. Mom, he said, a sigh in his voice. I think you need to accept that Dad has the right to be happy. You two haven't been in love for years. Everyone could see that. My own son. Robert, I gave up everything to save his life. And that was your choice. But you can't hold that over his head forever. I'm not holding anything over his head. I'm just trying to understand how you can support this. He sounded irritated. Look, Mom, you've always been dramatic. Dad told me how you've been guilt-tripping him about the money. Sarah makes him happy in a way you haven't for years. He told you about Sarah? Of course he did. He's been miserable. Mom, give him a break. I hung up, my heart a raw wound. My own son painting me as the villain. But the worst was yet to come. I'd hoped to keep my partnership in Patterson and Associates, a consulting business I'd co-founded. A small income, a lifeline. But Margaret and Susan called me in. Gretchen, Margaret said, avoiding my eyes. Given everything you're going through personally, we think it might be best if you stepped back from the business. Step back? I helped found this company. Susan leaned forward, a sickly sweet sympathy in her eyes. We're concerned about your emotional state. The divorce, the financial stress. It's affecting your judgment. They accused me of missing meetings, being unfocused. Of course I was distracted. My husband was dying, then divorcing me. They offered me $15,000 for a partnership worth at least $40,000. I knew they were taking advantage. But I was so drained, so broken, I just didn't have the fight left in me. By February 1st, I had lost my husband, my son's respect, my home, my business, my life savings. I was 65 with nowhere to go. The homeless shelter on Maple Street became my address. The social worker was kind, but I felt like a statistic. It's just until you get back on your feet, she said, handing me a list of rules. That first night, lying on a narrow cot, listening to the murmurs of 30 other women, I wondered if this was how my story would end. Alone. Forgotten. Discarded by the very people I'd sacrificed everything for. Rain began to fall outside, and I pulled my thin blanket up to my chin, trying not to think about Damon and Sarah in the apartment I'd paid for, building a new life on the ashes of mine. Tomorrow would mark exactly 2 months since my world had collapsed. I had no idea that everything was about to change. 3 weeks in the shelter taught me survival. How to make instant coffee taste almost decent. How to disappear into myself when the woman 2 beds over screamed at invisible enemies. Most importantly, I learned that dignity was something you had to fight for every single day. The morning of the storm started like any other. I woke at 5:30, went to the communal bathroom. The mirror showed a stranger. My hair, once my pride, now hung limp and gray around a face that had aged years in just months. I had $7.34 left from selling my jewelry. That was it. The weather forecast had been ominous. A significant weather event, they called it. By noon, the shelter was preparing for lockdown. But at 4:30 p.m., I realized my mistake. I'd forgotten my blood pressure medication. Without it, I risked a stroke. The pills were upstairs, but I needed food to take them safely. Dinner wasn't until 6. My remaining $7.34 was enough for a small sandwich and milk from the corner store, 3 blocks away. The wind was already picking up, pushing against me as I stepped outside. Dark clouds churned, and the first fat raindrops splattered. I pulled my thin jacket tighter and hurried. The store was nearly empty. I grabbed a sandwich and milk, calculating the exact cost. $4.67. That left me with $2.67 for tomorrow. As I paid, the clerk glanced nervously outside. Storm's coming fast. You should get home quick. Home. I nodded, tucking my purchases into my jacket. The walk back should take 15 minutes. But I never made it. Halfway there, the sky ripped open. Not gentle rain, but a torrential downpour that soaked me in seconds. The wind turned vicious, whipping debris, making it impossible to see. I ducked into a doorway, but the storm only worsened. Lightning split the sky, followed by thunder so loud it made my teeth ache. This was no ordinary storm. This was deadly. That's when I heard it. A sound that cut through the howling wind and driving rain. Crying. Not the storm's wail, but human crying. A child. I peered into the deluge, trying to locate the source. There. Huddled behind garbage cans in an alley, a small figure. A little girl, maybe 7 or 8, soaked, shivering violently. I didn't think. I just ran. Honey. I called, my voice barely audible. Honey, what are you doing out here? She looked up with enormous brown eyes filled with terror. Small for her age, tangled dark hair plastered to her head. Clothes once expensive, now torn and muddy. I'm lost, she whispered, teeth chattering. I can't find my daddy. My heart broke. This tiny thing alone in this nightmare. Oh, sweetheart. I knelt beside her, not caring that the alley water immediately soaked my pants. How long have you been out here? Since this morning, I think. Maybe yesterday. I don't know. 3 days? 4 days. This child had been surviving on the streets, hiding from what sounded like kidnappers. How had no one found her? My shelter life meant no news, no social media. We need to call the police, I said gently. Her reaction was immediate, terrifying. She grabbed my arm, eyes wide with panic. No police. The men said if I called the police, they'd hurt my daddy. Sweetheart, the police are the good guys. They help find lost children. No, she cried, tears starting to flow. Please don't call them. Please. I held her as she shook. Whatever those men had told her, she was genuinely terrified. The storm raged outside. Hey, I said finally. No police tonight. But Charlotte, we have to find your daddy somehow. She nodded, wiping her nose. He's probably looking for me. I'm sure he is. We spent the next 4 hours in that convenience store. The clerk, Danny, was gruff but kind. He stopped charging for hot chocolate. Around midnight, the worst passed. We should try to find a safe place for you to sleep, I told Charlotte. But where? The shelter was out. Hotels. Impossible. I know a place, she said quietly. There's a park not far from here. It has a gazebo with a roof. The idea of spending the night in a park with a child made my stomach turn. But what choice did we have? As we left, Danny handed us a plastic bag. Granola bars, bottled water, a small blanket. Kid needs to eat, he grumbled. Outside, the air was cool, fresh after the storm. Charlotte led me to a small park. The gazebo was old but sturdy. I spread the blanket. She curled up against me like a small cat. Gretchen, she whispered, her voice tiny in the dark. Are you my guardian angel? The question caught me off guard. Here I was, a homeless woman with $13 to my name, and this precious child saw me as her protector. I'm just someone who cares about you, I said. Daddy always said that guardian angels come when you need them most. I held her tighter. Well, then maybe I am. As she drifted to sleep, I stared at the ceiling, wondering what tomorrow would bring. I had no idea that in less than 72 hours 17 black cars would pull up, and my life would change in ways I could never have imagined. 3 days blurred into a routine of careful survival and growing attachment. Charlotte and I. Mornings at the convenience store. Afternoons in the park. Nights in the gazebo or a laundromat. I was amazed by her resilience. She told me stories. A house with 12 bedrooms, a butterfly-shaped pool, horses. Daddy travels a lot, she explained. He makes things happen. Important things. That's why the bad men wanted to take me. On Tuesday afternoon, as we shared crackers in the park, Charlotte suddenly clutched my arm. Gretchen, she whispered, fear tightening her voice. That car. It's been there before. A black sedan, tinted windows parked across the street. My heart spiked. If the kidnappers had found us, we're going to walk away very calmly, I told her quietly. Just like we're going somewhere normal. Don't look back. We gathered our few belongings and walked deeper into the park. Behind us, a car door slammed. They're following us, Charlotte whimpered. I grabbed her hand and ran. We made it 2 blocks before a second black car appeared ahead, then a third from our left. We were surrounded. Men in dark suits emerged. Not rough criminals but professionals. Earpieces. Military bearing. I pulled Charlotte behind me. Stay back. I shouted. I've called the police. It was a lie. One man, older with kind eyes, stepped forward. Ma'am, my name is Agent Richards. We're not here to harm anyone. We're looking for Charlotte Wellington. Charlotte's grip tightened. Is that your last name, sweetheart? I asked. She nodded, tears streaming. But they might be lying. The bad men could be pretending. Agent Richards seemed to understand. Charlotte, honey. Do you remember the song your daddy used to sing you when you couldn't sleep? The one about the mockingbird. Charlotte's eyes widened. How do you know that? Because your daddy told me. He's been looking for you for 6 days, sweetheart. He's very worried. Daddy's really looking for me? He is. And he's right here. Richard spoke into his earpiece. Moments later, the most expensive car I'd ever seen, a Rolls-Royce, pulled up. The man who stepped out took my breath away. Tall, dark hair silvered at the temples, a presence that commanded attention. His suit probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. But when he saw Charlotte, all that fell away. Charlotte! Daddy! She broke away from me, launching herself into his arms. He caught her, held her like she was the most precious thing in the world, his face buried in her hair as his shoulders shook. Thank God, he whispered, his voice cracking. Thank God you're safe. I stood there watching, suddenly acutely aware of my own appearance. Unwashed hair, 3-day-old clothes, smelling of laundromat. After several minutes, the man, Charlotte's father, set her down, but kept one hand on her shoulder as he looked at me. You're the woman who's been taking care of my daughter. It wasn't a question. His eyes studied me intently. Yes, I found her during the storm. She was scared and alone. He stepped closer. Agent Richards told me what his team observed. You've been protecting her for 3 days, feeding her, keeping her safe, staying with her. I just nodded. What's your name? Gretchen. Gretchen Patterson. He repeated it as if memorizing it. My name is Marcus Wellington. The name still meant nothing to me. Charlotte told me what you did for her. How you spent your last money to buy her dry clothes and food. How you protected her from the people she was afraid of. Any decent person would have done the same thing. No, Gretchen. Something shifted in his expression. Most people would have called the authorities immediately and gone on with their lives. You made yourself responsible for a stranger's child. Charlotte tugged his sleeve. Daddy, Gretchen doesn't have a home. She's been sleeping outside with me. Marcus's attention sharpened. You're homeless. Heat flooded my cheeks. It's temporary. I'm getting back on my feet. Why? The question was direct, blunt. I wasn't sure how to answer. Life circumstances, I said finally. Marcus studied me for a long moment, then spoke to Agent Richards. I want a full background check within 2 hours. Everything. Financial history, criminal record, medical records, employment history, family situation. Everything. Sir, that's not really necessary. It's very necessary. Marcus cut him off, his tone brooking no argument. This woman has been caring for my daughter for 3 days. I need to know who she is. A flash of indignation. I don't need your investigation. I'm not asking for anything from you. Maybe not, Marcus said. But I'm asking something from you. I'd like you to come with us. Charlotte doesn't want to let you out of her sight. And frankly, neither do I. At least until I can properly thank you. Charlotte immediately grabbed my hand. Please, Gretchen, don't leave me. Sweetheart, you're safe now. You're with your daddy. But I want you to come too. Please. I looked between Charlotte's pleading face and her father's unreadable expression. I don't think that's appropriate. You have your daughter back. That's what matters. Get in the car, Gretchen. It wasn't a request. I'm afraid I have to insist. Agent Richard stepped closer. Ma'am, Mr. Wellington just wants to ensure your safety. You've been exposed to a dangerous situation by helping Charlotte. Until we're certain the threat has been neutralized, you could be at risk. That possibility hadn't occurred to me. For how long? 24 hours, Marcus said. Give me 24 hours to debrief Charlotte, deal with the security situation, and figure out how to properly thank you. Then if you want to leave, you're free to go. Charlotte was still holding my hand. Please, Gretchen. I'm scared without you. And that decided it. The interior of the Rolls-Royce was like nothing I'd ever experienced. Leather softer than most beds. Climate control like a gentle spring breeze. Where are we going? I asked. Somewhere safe, Marcus replied. Baby girl, I need you to tell me everything that happened. Charlotte launched into her story. She'd been taken from private school, held in an abandoned warehouse. What did they want from you? I asked Marcus. His jaw tightened. Access to certain government contracts, information that could be worth hundreds of millions. They were waiting for me to change my mind. He looked at Charlotte with such pride. What they didn't count on was Charlotte being resourceful enough to escape. The car turned through massive iron gates. The Wellington estate. Calling it a house would be like calling the ocean a pond. 20 acres, manicured gardens, fountains, outbuildings larger than most homes. The mansion itself looked like something from a European fairy tale. This is where you live? I asked Charlotte. She nodded. Want to see my room? It has a balcony that looks out over the stables. As we pulled up, staff emerged, a small army of people. Marcus helped Charlotte out, then offered me his hand. I hesitated, acutely aware of the contrast between his manicured fingers and my worn hands. Mrs. Patterson, he said as we walked toward the entrance. Before we go inside, I need you to understand something. What happened to Charlotte? What you did for her changes things. I don't know exactly how yet, but it does. I wasn't sure what he meant, but something in his tone told me my 24 hours here would be far more complicated than I anticipated. That guest suite was larger than the entire apartment I'd shared with Damon. The bathroom alone was bigger than most bedrooms, marble and gold. A shower with more buttons than a spacecraft. As hot water cascaded over me, I tried to process it all. Marcus had disappeared into a flurry of phone calls. Charlotte gave me a tour of her wing. An enormous bedroom, a canopy bed, a reading nook, French doors to a balcony overlooking the stables. This is where I have tea parties when Daddy's home, she'd explained. Would you like to have one with me later? I'd love that, sweetheart. Her enthusiasm was infectious, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I didn't belong here. In this world of marble and crystal, I was a temporary guest, soon to return to my reality. The shelter, my 7 remaining dollars. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Mrs. Patterson? A woman's voice. I'm Elizabeth, the house manager. I've left some clothes for you on the bed. I found an outfit laid out that probably cost more than I'd made in a month at my old job. Cashmere, tailored slacks, underwear with price tags still attached. Even shoes my exact size. How did they know? Then I looked out the window. Men in suits, moving with the same precision as Agent Richards. Marcus hadn't just brought me here for Charlotte's comfort. He really was concerned about my safety. This suggested resources far beyond what I'd initially realized. Elizabeth appeared. How are you feeling, dear? She asked with a warm smile. Much better, I admitted. The clothes are beautiful, but I can't accept them. They're a gift from Mr. Wellington. He specifically requested you have everything you might need during your stay. I'm only staying 24 hours. Elizabeth's smile didn't waver, though her tone suggested skepticism. Mr. Wellington would like to see you in his study when you're ready. Charlotte is having her dinner. The study was exactly as I'd imagined. Dark wood, leather-bound books, furniture crafted by master artisans. Marcus sat behind a massive desk, tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. He looked up. You look rested. I feel human again, I admitted. Thank you for the clothes, but I can't accept them. We'll discuss that later. He gestured to a chair. Please sit. We need to talk. About what? About you. Marcus leaned back, his intense eyes studying me. I had my people run the background check I mentioned. I know about the divorce, the medical bills, your husband's betrayal. I know about your business, what you sacrificed, and how you ended up at the shelter. Heat flooded my cheeks. The idea of strangers dissecting my personal failures made me feel exposed. You had no right. I had every right, Marcus interrupted smoothly. A stranger spent 3 days caring for my daughter in dangerous circumstances. I needed to know who you are. And what did you conclude? That you're exactly who you appeared to be. A woman who has been dealt a series of terrible hands, but who still chose to help a frightened child with the last money she had. I didn't know what to say. Marcus leaned forward, his expression serious. Gretchen, I want to make you an offer. What kind of offer? I need someone to help with Charlotte. Someone she trusts. Someone who understands what she's been through. He paused. I travel frequently for business, sometimes for weeks at a time. Charlotte has nannies and tutors, but what she doesn't have is someone who genuinely cares about her well-being. She has you when I'm here, yes, but I'm not here enough. There was pain in his voice. What happened this week has made me realize that Charlotte needs more stability, more consistency. What exactly are you suggesting? I'm offering you a position as Charlotte's companion. Not a nanny, she's too old for that. But someone who would be responsible for her emotional well-being when I'm traveling. Someone who would live here, be part of her daily life. I stared at him. You want me to move in here? The position comes with a salary of $200,000 per year, plus complete benefits, housing, meals, and a generous expense account for anything Charlotte might need. $200,000. It was more money than I'd ever dreamed of. Plus, Marcus continued, there would be a signing bonus of $50,000 to help you get back on your feet. This is insane, I said quietly. You don't know me. You don't know if I'm qualified. I know you spent 3 days protecting her when you had nothing to gain and everything to lose. I know you gave her your last $20 when you were homeless yourself. I know she feels safe with you in a way she hasn't with anyone since her mother died. Her mother died? Marcus's expression grew distant. Cancer. When Charlotte was 5. It's just been the two of us ever since, and I haven't done nearly as good a job as I should have. I understood then. This wasn't just about hiring help. This was about a father who knew he was failing his daughter, and had found someone who could fill a void he couldn't fill himself. Why me? I asked. You could hire anyone. Someone with credentials. Charlotte doesn't trust easily, Marcus said. She's been through too much. But she trusts you. That's worth more than any credentials. I thought about Charlotte's small hand in mine during the storm, how she'd curled against me in the gazebo, how she'd called me her guardian angel. I need time to think about this. Of course, take all the time you need. But before I could respond, Elizabeth appeared in the doorway, her expression one I hadn't seen before. Barely controlled anger. Sir, I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation at the front gate. Marcus frowned. What kind of situation? A man claiming to be Mrs. Patterson's husband. He's quite insistent about seeing her. My stomach dropped. Damon. You don't have to see him, Marcus said immediately. Security can remove him. But I was already standing. No. I'll talk to him. I need to know what he wants. Marcus's expression hardened. Then I'm coming with you. The front gate was a quarter-mile away, but we could hear Damon's voice even from that distance, shouting at the security guard, demanding entry. As our car approached, I saw him clearly for the first time since the divorce. Older, thinner, and a desperate posture I'd never seen. The moment he saw me, his demeanor changed. Gretchen. He rushed toward the car as I got out. Thank God I found you. What are you doing here, Damon? How did you even know where I was? It doesn't matter. I've been looking everywhere for you. He reached for my hands, but I stepped back. Gretchen, I've made a terrible mistake. The worst mistake of my life. What are you talking about? Sarah. The divorce? All of it. I was crazy, Gretchen. The cancer, the treatment, it affected my judgment. I wasn't thinking clearly. I became aware of Marcus standing slightly behind me, of security personnel discreetly positioned. Whatever was about to happen, it had an audience. You seemed pretty clear when you asked for a divorce, I said. I was scared, Damon continued, pleading. Scared of dying. Scared of being a burden. I thought if I pushed you away, it would be easier for everyone. By having an affair? Damon had the grace to look ashamed. That was a mistake. A huge mistake. Sarah, she took advantage of me when I was vulnerable. Took advantage? I couldn't help but laugh, a bitter broken sound. Damon, you left me homeless. You threw away 42 years of marriage for a woman young enough to be your daughter. I know, he said desperately. And I've regretted it every single day since. Sarah left me, Gretchen. 2 weeks after the divorce was final, she took half of everything I had and moved to Florida with another man. So that was it. He wasn't here because he missed me. He was here because his young girlfriend had taken him for everything he was worth. I'm sorry that happened to you, I said, surprised to find that I meant it. But it doesn't change anything between us. It changes everything. We can start over, Gretchen. We can get remarried. Go back to the way things were. The way things were? I repeated. I sold my business to save your life. I sold our house. I gave up everything for you. And the moment you got better, you threw me away like garbage. I was wrong. You were selfish, I interrupted. And cruel. And you left me with nothing. But look at you now. Damon gestured at the mansion. You've obviously landed on your feet. Found yourself a rich man to take care of you. The implication, the casual assumption that I was some gold digger, hit me like a physical blow. You don't know anything about my situation, I said quietly. I know you're not living in a shelter anymore. Damon's tone became more aggressive. I know you're wearing clothes that cost more than most people make in a month. I know you've obviously moved on pretty quickly for a woman who claimed to love me. Claimed to love you? The words came out sharper than I intended. I gave you my entire life, Damon. I sacrificed my dreams, my security, my future for you. And you repaid me by abandoning me the moment it was convenient. People make mistakes, Gretchen. Some mistakes can't be forgiven. Marcus stepped forward then, his presence suddenly much more prominent. I think this conversation is over. Damon seemed to notice him for the first time. And who exactly are you? Marcus Wellington. And I believe you're trespassing on my property. We're here to get my wife, Damon said, puffing his chest in a pathetic display of dominance. Your wife. Marcus's eyebrow rose slightly. That's interesting. Because according to the background check my legal team ran yesterday, your divorce from Mrs. Patterson was finalized 4 months ago. The color drained from Damon's face. There was an error. There was no error. Marcus's voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath. What there was, apparently, was an attempt to manipulate Mrs. Patterson with false information. Robert looked confused. Dad, you said? Your father lied, Marcus said simply. Just as he's been lying about his reasons for wanting his ex-wife back. You don't know anything about our situation. Damon sputtered. Don't I? Marcus pulled out his phone. Let's see. Damon Patterson, age 68, recently divorced, lost approximately $80,000 to a fraudulent investment scheme promoted by his girlfriend Sarah Morrison. Currently 3 months behind on rent for his apartment. Credit cards maxed out. Bank accounts overdrawn. With each word, Damon seemed to shrink. So you see, Marcus continued, I know exactly what this is about. This isn't a man who wants his wife back. This is a man who needs someone to bail him out of his financial problems. Robert stared at his father, growing horror on his face. Dad, is this true? Damon's face was red with humiliation and rage. Gretchen, you can't seriously believe I can believe it, I said quietly. Because it's exactly what you did during your cancer treatment. You used me then just like you're trying to use me now. That's not. I was sick, Gretchen. I wasn't thinking clearly. And what's your excuse now? Damon had no answer. Marcus stepped closer, and I could see why his team followed his orders without question. When Marcus Wellington wanted to be intimidating, he was terrifying. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, his voice deadly quiet. You're going to leave this property immediately. You're not going to contact Mrs. Patterson again. You're not going to harass her, threaten her, or attempt to manipulate her. If you do, you'll discover exactly how much influence a man with my resources can have over someone's life. You can't threaten me, Damon said, but his voice was shaking. I'm not threatening you. I'm making you a promise. Marcus paused, letting that sink in. Mrs. Patterson is under my protection now. That means she's untouchable. Do you understand? Whatever fight Damon had left completely deflated. But Robert wasn't finished. Mom, please don't let this man turn you against your own family. I looked at my son, this man I'd raised, loved, sacrificed for, and felt a profound sadness. Robert, where were you when I was homeless? You knew exactly where I was. Your father told you. You chose not to care. Robert had the grace to look ashamed. I didn't know it was that bad. You didn't want to know. When I called you after the divorce, what did you say? You said I should accept that your father had the right to be happy. You called me dramatic for objecting to his affair. You took his side without even hearing mine. Robert's face flushed. He's my father and I'm your mother. But that didn't seem to matter when it was inconvenient for you. So that's it. Robert's voice was rising. You're choosing this stranger over your own family? I'm choosing myself, I said firmly. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing what's best for me instead of sacrificing everything for people who don't appreciate it. You'll regret this, Damon said bitterly. Both of you will regret this. Marcus's expression didn't change. Are you threatening my family, Mr. Patterson? The word family hit me like a lightning bolt. Marcus had just referred to me as family. Because if you are, Marcus continued, I should mention that every word of this conversation is being recorded. Threatening the family of someone with government security clearance is a federal crime. That was the final blow. Damon and Robert left without another word. Heads down, dignity in tatters. As their car disappeared, I felt like I just witnessed the end of a chapter of my life. Are you all right? Marcus asked gently. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I was. Did you mean it? What you said about family? Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Charlotte lost her mother when she was 5. I've been trying to be both parents to her, but I've failed in a lot of ways. She needs stability, love, someone who puts her first. He turned to me. But it's more than that, Gretchen. In the 3 days you spent protecting her, Charlotte smiled more than she had in months. She laughed. She felt safe. You gave her something I hadn't been able to give her. What's that? A mother's love. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. I can't replace her real mother, I said softly. I'm not asking you to replace anyone. I'm asking you to be yourself. To be the woman who spent her last $20 on a frightened child. To be the person who made Charlotte feel safe when her whole world was falling apart. We stood there in the afternoon sunlight. For the first time since this whole ordeal began, I allowed myself to imagine. What if? What if I woke up every morning in that beautiful guest suite? What if I had tea parties with Charlotte in her garden? What if I was part of a family that actually wanted me? The job offer still stands, Marcus said quietly. $200,000 a year plus benefits, plus the signing bonus. But more than that, Gretchen, you'd be giving Charlotte something she's never really had. A stable, loving presence in her daily life. I thought about the shelter, my 7 remaining dollars, the loneliness. Then I thought about Charlotte's bright smile, her small hand in mine, the way she'd called me her guardian angel. Yes, I said, before I could change my mind. Yes, I'll take the job. Marcus's smile was radiant. Charlotte's going to be over the moon. But as we walked back to the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that this decision would change more than just my living situation. It would change everything, in ways I couldn't even begin to imagine. 2 years later, I stood in the same garden where Charlotte and I had shared our first tea party. At 10 years old, she was taller, more confident, but still insisted on our daily tea time. The transformation in both our lives had been remarkable, but not in ways I could have predicted. Marcus had been true to his word about everything. Salary, benefits, signing bonus. But more importantly, he had kept his word about treating me as family. Gretchen. Charlotte called from across the garden. Come see. The blue butterfly is back. I made my way to her, crouched beside the lavender bushes. She only comes here when she knows it's safe, Charlotte said softly. Just like you did. The observation was so unexpectedly wise it took my breath away. You know what, sweetheart? I said, settling beside her. I think you're right. Our morning routine was sacred. Breakfast, garden time, then her lessons while I managed the increasingly complex social calendar that came with being part of the Wellington household. Because that's what I had become. Not just Charlotte's companion, but an integral part of their family. The change had been gradual. First, Marcus started asking my opinion about Charlotte's education, her activities, her emotional needs. Then, he began including me in decisions about the household, the staff, even aspects of his business travel. What do you think about the Singapore trip? He'd ask over dinner. 2 weeks is a long time to be away from Charlotte. She's doing much better with separation anxiety, I'd respond. But maybe we could arrange video calls at specific times each day. Somewhere along the way we had become natural. 6 months after I'd moved in, Marcus had surprised me with a new title and a significant raise. Head of Family Operations, he'd called it, with a salary of $300,000 per year. I don't understand, I'd said. I'm already doing everything I was hired to do. You're doing far more than that, he'd replied. You're managing staff schedules, coordinating Charlotte's activities, handling social obligations, and making this house feel like a home instead of just a residence. That's worth recognizing. But the real recognition had come in smaller moments. The first time Charlotte called me Gretchen Mom, in front of her friends. The night she had a nightmare and ran to my room instead of her father's. The afternoon Marcus introduced me to a business associate as Charlotte's second mother, and the person who keeps this family functioning. Each moment built upon the others until I realized something profound. I wasn't just employed by the Wellingtons. I belonged to them and they belonged to me. Time for lessons. I reminded Charlotte. Do I have to? Can't we just play in the garden all day? Education is important, young lady. Besides, don't you have that writing competition next month? Charlotte's face lit up. Oh right. I need to practice my jumping. As we entered through the French doors, I nearly collided with Elizabeth, carrying a silver tray with what appeared to be legal documents. Oh, Mrs. Patterson, perfect timing. These just arrived for you. My heart skipped. Legal documents were never good news. What are they? I'm not sure, but the messenger said they were urgent. I took the envelope, my mind jumping to worst-case scenarios. But as I read, my confusion only deepened. What is it? Charlotte asked, sensing my distress. I'm not sure I understand this, I said, reading the legal language again. That's when Marcus appeared, still in his suit, but with a smile that suggested he knew exactly what I was holding. Ah, he said casually. Those arrived. Marcus, what is this? He sat across from me, his expression more serious. It's an adoption proposal. An adoption proposal? I repeated stupidly. For Charlotte to legally adopt you as her grandmother? The words didn't compute. I don't understand. Charlotte bounced in her chair. We want to make it official. You're already my Gretchen Mom. But Daddy says we can make it legal. So you'll really be part of our family forever. I stared at the papers, then at Marcus, then at Charlotte. This isn't how adoption works. Children don't adopt adults. Actually, they can, Marcus said gently. It's called adult adoption, and it's more common than you might think. Charlotte would become your legal granddaughter, and you would become her legal grandmother. It doesn't change anything about our daily lives, but it makes the relationships official. But why? Marcus leaned forward, his expression intensely serious. Because in 2 years, you've become the most important person in Charlotte's life. Because when I travel now, I don't worry about her because I know you're here. Because this house isn't the same without you. And, Charlotte added with the matter-of-fact tone only children can manage, because we love you and we want you to be stuck with us forever. Stuck with them. As if being part of this extraordinary family could ever be a burden. There's more, Marcus continued. He pulled out another set of documents. If you agree to the adoption, I'd also like to update my will to include you as Charlotte's guardian. Not just companion or caregiver, but her legal guardian if anything happens to me. The weight of what he was offering hit me like a physical blow. Legal guardianship meant that if something happened to Marcus, Charlotte would be mine to raise. It meant permanent security, permanent belonging, permanent family. I don't know what to say, I whispered. Say yes, Charlotte exclaimed. Please, Gretchen. I want you to be my real grandma. I looked at this beautiful child who had already lost one mother, and had chosen me to fill that void. I thought about the scared little girl I'd found 2 years ago, and the confident, loving child she'd become. Yes, I said, my voice breaking. Yes, absolutely. Charlotte launched herself into my arms with a squeal of delight that could probably be heard 3 counties away. There's one more thing, Marcus said as Charlotte finally settled down. A celebration is in order. I've planned a small party for this weekend. Nothing elaborate, just close friends and family. Family, I repeated, tasting the word. Family, he confirmed. The party that weekend was indeed small, but it felt enormous to me. Marcus had invited Agent Richards and his team, Elizabeth, and other staff members who had become dear friends. Charlotte's writing instructor, her favorite teacher, and 3 of her closest school friends. But the most meaningful moment came when we gathered in the garden for the cake cutting. Charlotte stood on a chair to address our small group. Thank you all for coming to celebrate my new grandma, she announced with the confidence of a born public speaker. 2 years ago, Gretchen found me when I was lost and scared. But really, I think maybe I found her too. She needed a family as much as I did. As applause filled the garden, tears streamed down my face. Later that evening, after the guests had gone and Charlotte was asleep, I found myself in the study with Marcus, sharing a quiet drink. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't found Charlotte that night? He asked. I considered the question. I'd probably still be at the shelter or worse. And Charlotte would still be traumatized, afraid to trust anyone. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Marcus, I said finally, why did you really do all this? The job, the adoption, the guardianship? Why? He was quiet for so long I thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft. Because in 42 years of marriage, no one ever loved you the way you deserve to be loved. Because you spent your entire life taking care of other people who took you for granted. Because when you had nothing, you still gave everything to protect my daughter. He looked directly at me then. Because Charlotte needs you. And I think maybe you need us too. I do need you, I admitted. Both of you. More than I ever imagined possible. 3 months after the adoption was finalized, I received an unexpected visitor. Elizabeth found me in the garden and announced that Robert was at the front gate asking to see me. My first instinct was to refuse. I hadn't spoken to my son since that awful confrontation 2 years ago. But something in Elizabeth's expression suggested this visit was different. He looks different, she said carefully. Humbler. I found Robert standing beside a modest sedan, dressed in simple clothes. He'd lost weight, and there were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Hello, Mom, he said quietly. Robert. We stood looking at each other for several awkward moments before he spoke again. I came to apologize. I know it's too little too late, but I needed to say it. I waited, not making it easy for him. I was wrong about everything. About Dad, about the divorce, about how I treated you. I was selfish and cruel, and I've regretted it every day since. What changed? I asked. Robert looked down at his hands. Dad came to me 6 months ago. He needed money, and I was the only family he had left. I gave him what I could, but it was never enough. He kept asking for more, making bigger and bigger demands. He looked up at me, eyes full of genuine remorse. I realized that's exactly what he'd done to you. Used you until there was nothing left, then discarded you when you couldn't give anymore. I tried to tell you that. I know. I should have listened. Robert's voice broke slightly. I should have protected you instead of abandoning you. I felt my anger soften, replaced by sadness for the relationship we'd lost. Robert, I appreciate the apology. I really do. But I can't just forget what happened. I understand. I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted you to know that I see clearly now. What Dad did was unforgivable, and what I did was almost as bad. He reached into his car and pulled out a small wrapped package. This was supposed to be your birthday present 3 years ago, the one I never gave you because I was angry about the divorce. I unwrapped it to find a small silver frame containing a photo from my 50th birthday party. Robert was perhaps 25 in the picture, his arm around me. Both of us laughing. I found it while cleaning out my apartment, he said. I'm moving back to Denver starting over, but I wanted you to have this in case you ever want to remember when things were good between us. Looking at that photo, I remembered the son who used to call me every Sunday, who brought me flowers on Mother's Day, who had once told his friends I was the strongest woman he knew. I'm glad you're starting over, I said sincerely. I hope you find happiness. I hope I find peace, Robert replied. I hope someday I can become the son you deserved. After he left, I stood in the garden for a long time, holding that photo, thinking about forgiveness, redemption, and second chances. That evening, Charlotte found me there. You look sad, Gretchen, Grandma, she said, using the new title she'd insisted on. Not sad, sweetheart, just thoughtful. About what? I showed her the photo. About how sometimes people make terrible mistakes, but they can change if they really want to. Charlotte studied the picture seriously. Is that your son? The one who was mean to you? Yes, but he apologized today. He said he was sorry for how he treated me. Do you forgive him? The question, asked with such innocent directness, made me think. I think I'm learning to, I said finally. Charlotte nodded sagely. Daddy says forgiveness doesn't mean you have to trust someone again. It just means you stop letting their bad choices hurt you. Out of the mouths of babes. As we walked back to the house together, Charlotte's small hand in mine, I reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought me to this moment. 2 years ago, I had been a broken woman with nothing left to lose. I had spent my last $20 on a frightened child and thought I was making the final gesture of a failed life. But that gesture had led to this. A family that cherished me. A home where I was valued. A future full of love and purpose. Sometimes guardian angels, I realized, come to save themselves as much as the people they protect. And sometimes the very act of giving everything away is what finally brings you everything you never knew you needed. Standing in the doorway of the mansion that was now truly my home, watching Charlotte skip ahead to tell her father about our garden conversation, I felt something I hadn't experienced in decades. Complete and perfect peace. I was Gretchen Wellington now, grandmother to the most wonderful child in the world, and member of a family that had shown me what unconditional love really meant. At 67 years old, my real life had finally begun. What would you have done in my place? Have you ever had to choose yourself over the family you always knew? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to hear your stories.